Welcome back to the Mind Matters podcast. Today, I have as my guest Chris Michaels, who runs the DarkSide Podcast, which I absolutely love. It's a very interesting podcast, very interesting guests and stories. And so, Chris, thank you very much for coming on today. It's a pleasure to have you here. Obviously, we've got similar backgrounds.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate asking on. To be honest with you.
No, it's my pleasure. And first and foremost, thank you for all the support you've given me since over the last little while. It is much appreciated. So yeah, it's onwards and upwards.
Absolutely. No, to be honest, I'm one of them people that I'll support. But if I see someone that people have put their heart and soul into something, and I see that quality is there, and it's like something that I kind of look at and go, yeah, I identify with that, and I can appreciate the time and effort put into that and that level of quality. And because it's a lot of time, effort, especially on, say, for example, books or any other kind of area, I'll fully support that all the way.
No, it's right. It's massively appreciated. So, mutual support, as the old saying goes. That's the way it works. So we've had a chat just now about kind of what this podcast is about, Mind Matters, and it's about how we've learned to overcome life's little hurdles, the physical and the mental. But this is about how we've either developed our own way just by default, or we've learned from other people, or we've actually gone out and sought ways to deal with life's shit, because there can be a fair bit of it at times. as we all know. Sometimes there's more shit in the fan than not. But so why don't you introduce yourself and give a little potted history, really, and talk about any and we'll just whatever comes up that you want to talk about. Let's talk about these in whatever detail you want to with these experiences, and delve into it from a psychological perspective, and look at what it is you have done to overcome and how that's changed over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I'm Chris Michaels. I'm former Royal Navy Air Engineer Mechanic. So I joined in 1999. Basically what happened on that little bit of a journey was, obviously I was in the fleet, and actually was about to transition or try to transition to go for selection for Royal Navy clearance diver, because there's two options for yourself that I wanted to go for. It was kind of like either go get me green lid as a Royal Marine Commando, or I would officially had to leave the service and rejoin as Royal Marine, or there was a point of transition to go for selection for the Royal Navy clearance divers. But
Okay.
What happens was, through training for that, I bust my knee. It was like basically I broke the major bones in my knee, and I tore all my ligaments. Not that the Navy basically, it was only like a 35 kilo Bergen run. It was like mile and a half, because I was thinking, well, I'm going to carry in tanks and cylinders and doing a lot of heavy work, and it's time to up my ante basically and get the fizz in. So I was up there at a good level, but I know you have to take it to that next level, especially if you want to go to that area of especially working in water as well. It's probably one of the worst environments to work in.
Yes.
It's anybody, especially when you're in the dark deep, and that's because my route was originally, it was two ways I was looking at it. It was either, like I said, I'll go Royal Marines or get me green lid, or I could have gone for that option through the jungly squadrons, because I was obviously being air engineer mechanic. But then I looked at it as going into the fleet for a diver, but then going and working on more special forces. That's the route I wanted to go for. What I aimed at, because that's where I felt like that's where I was looking at life. That's where my expectations of myself, what level I was pushing myself for. Because to me, it was like, you kind of find yourself at these levels of okay, I've done that, great, I've ticked the box. I want to go to the next level and next level. And at that point, obviously training, that was, I want to take myself to the next level. And then to myself, that was like, I hit a wall. I hit that wall, and it took 3 months, and they were still like, no. Because just briefly on that one, when they showed us, because I went to Plymouth Hospital, because what it was I managed to get into the smaller hospital on board the base. I had a commander surgeon, moving around my knee, and he went, right, there's floating bone in there, I can tell. I was like, okay, right, great. How do we fix this? So I had to go to Plymouth Hospital. What they did was they'd already took the x-rays. They gave me the x-ray, but on your knee, you've got like a trident shape. So that top bit was snapped off completely.
Ouch.
It was jagged, basically. So what happened was, obviously the knee, it just completely collapsed on itself. I torn all the ligaments anyway. Went and got a CAT scan 3 months later, and I kept going back, have you heard anything? Basically, the results was, you're fine. Basically, that was their attitude. You were fine. And I was like, no, I'm not fine, because those x-rays don't look healthy to me. And it's in your own mind at that point saying,
yeah,
this is something wrong. I'm not happy. I want something done about it. And I've actually had friends who've had injuries, similar injuries, actually had a surgery, and they had to leave because they'd messed it up, you know? So
Okay.
I've seen both sides of it. But on that point, they wouldn't let us do it. Then it was a case of, I started getting very anxious, very like, I was on board Ark Royal at that point. It was on refit. This was 2001. And obviously, like, when you're on board ship, it's very small, very, very small. When seems like a big ship on the outside, when you go inside. And I was working on ship's protection, which is basically pirate hunting. You know, basically, if you had pirates on board ship, you'd go and neutralize them if that was it, need be. Working on air engineering department, so I was working on weapons as well. So you're talking bombs, torpedoes, you know, that kind of area.
Yeah.
Basically, I got to a point where, like I said, it became very claustrophobic, because on your bunks, you kind of only got about a meter between yourself and the bunk above you. Very small areas. To be honest, before that, I was fine, absolutely fine. I could, you know, be submerged in water, underwater. I was naturally in the water. That's where I lived. You know, I was at most peace in that place. And so being confined was never a problem to me. I'd already done diving. I'd already done this part, not a problem, even on oxygen and areas. And it was like, fine. And it was just this weird feeling of the walls coming in, getting smaller and smaller, and getting very like, you're saying, right, this is something wrong. This kept going backwards and forwards. No, you're absolutely fine. And it's like, you know, when someone's trying to tell you something and you're still going, no, actually, this is my body. I can feel this.
Yeah.
I couldn't run. Even 3 months later, I couldn't put pressure on it, couldn't do anything. And it became that mental battle of like, I know you don't want to pay out on a medical discharge and pay me a lot of money to see me gone. So at that point, I'd done when I joined 99, so you're talking about 2.5 years at that point, something like that.
Okay.
2, 3, yeah. Basically, what happened after that was I hit the drink. Big time. It was like, that was my way of coping. And the thing was, with the alcohol, became very angry, a lot of aggression in there, because you're just pissed off, basically. You're just annoyed. You're just thinking, this is my career gone. This is basically, you know, when I look at it now, you kind of go, if I'd have done this, this would have happened. This would have been fine. And it's that should have, would have, could have scenario. And yes, I could have opted to go junglies, like I said, and gone and got my green lead that way. But I kind of was like, I want to go small ships and go and, you know, travel the world. And the second option was go seeking, which is more like, yeah, either airbase or aircraft carrier at the time. And I didn't, and I put third down as jungly. Obviously, I didn't get the first option. I managed to get the second. So I was like, okay, I'm all the way down the corner now. But really what happened was I was already, at that point, it was like, I knew that was it. That was my career gone. Because physically, you can't, you know yourself, even if I'd have thought I'm fine and just switched off and went, I'm fine, knowing that I would not have been able to either complete the course, because it would physically, that would have been it. They would have picked up something straight away. Secondly, it was a point of like, what do I do? Do I just carry on going forward and you kind of hit that mental battle, because every day, you think this isn't going to get fixed. This isn't going to get better. I'm not happy with this. They're not going to help me, because if I push it, they're only going to turn around and say, right, you know, going to kick you out. They're not going to pay you out, basically.
Wow.
So at that point, it basically got to a point where I was like, okay, I was in a relationship with someone at that point, and I just made that decision. I was like, right, I'm out. Basically, the person did help us get out, but this is where I didn't realize at the time, I kind of had my doubts at the beginning of this relationship. In hindsight, shouldn't have gone there. But it is what it is. And at that point, and it basically, by and large, it turned into a 16-year mentally and well, it was mentally abusive relationship. It was put down as being.
Okay.
So yeah. So basically,
time.
And people always keep saying to me, "Why did you stay in that?" Because at that time, I've got a never quit attitude. It was like, I would rather die than quit. That's my attitude through and through. And I'll go and go and go and go. And maybe that's the root cause of PTS, because you kind of flame from frustration, but then also that part of being stubborn. You can hit that wall, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know, I've heard this so many times. I've been guilty of it as well. Is the military mindset is you've got something to accomplish.
Yeah.
And you'll do everything you can to make sure that you achieve that.
Yeah.
And that, which is admirable, and it's when it's applied in the right way for the right thing, and that's how we succeed. But when there are times in life when we need to kind of do that little, take a knee.
Yeah.
Go, what the fuck am I doing? Is this actually really worth it?
Yeah.
But we don't do that. We don't think like that at the time.
No.
It took me a long time to kind of adapt that for myself and other people. I learned from other people to do that, because I was making the same, banging your head against the same wall. Strange. We are strange creatures.
We are, because we have got that mentality. It's great, like I said, when it's applied in the right way. But when you're in chaos, in those environments, you kind of always going to be the one that's going to be leading from the front, leading by example, or you just switch off. Yeah. But the problem is, I use this analogy, and I've used it for quite a few years now. It's the pressure cooker. You basically get a pressure cooker, but what you're doing is you sit in the middle and you're chucking in all the emotions. You've got your anxiety, you've got your panic, you've got this, you've got that, you've got all this anger, fear, everything's put in there. And they put the lid on and turn the heat up. And what happens? You tend to think, but you've got to have that release valve. Yes. And the problem is you'll find that you'll just go and go and go, and you're absorbing all this like negative energy. And I found that through that period of that relationship, because when I did eventually talk about it, it was kind of like, looking back, it was such a long period. You're talking over 16 years. And basically from the military to into this relationship, through stillbirths to, miscarriages and all the experiences that go with that, to being in a relationship where the other person obviously cheated on us. And there's so much going on in your head, and then you're kind of battling yourself, and then you have these like day-to-day arguments that you kind of going, what's going on here? And you're trying to keep your head above that water, and for fact. And the other part of it is obviously once I left, and they went, right, okay, there's your it was fluoxetine originally, and they gave us propranolol as well for my heart. Yeah. But what they didn't tell us was they gave us them, and I was like, all right, 2. And I read on the box after taking them for quite a while that these can cause blackouts. I was blacking out anyway. I was literally walking up the stairs, stopped, and was like, whoa. And I literally went all the way back down the stairs. And it was just lucky that I managed, because I'd done martial arts before, that I'd managed to position myself as I was rolling back down, that I didn't break my neck. I was getting a point where I was literally making a coffee, and my finger must have been on the kettle still, because it was boiling. Kettle just blew up, and as I went like that, turn it off the wall, the water came up, and it was this hand here, and it stripped all the skin off. It was just raw flesh. And I was told at times I was standing at a window watching a thunderstorm, and I was like, I wasn't. I was like, yes, you were. And I was like, I can't recollect that. Panic attacks, anxiety attacks. I've been in hospitals where I've literally sat in a wheelchair. They went, right, come on then. I've got up and went slam and face planted the floor. And I literally went numb on the left-hand side completely, because they say when you're having that kind of anxiety and panic attacks is you hyperventilate so much, you can paralyze yourself. All on and then on the left-hand side, I felt like I was at the dentist. I'd just been jabbed. I was like, oh, right. But all these things, they give you these tablets and say, take them. And I was like, up there, a zombie. That's what I was. I was a zombie for years.
Yes.
And I didn't realize, because also I have a very highly analytical mind as well. And they basically said it needs to slow down. And I was like, okay, right, fair enough. To stop you overthinking and this and that. And I said, well, what is, describe us what analytical mind is. And when it's that high, when your brain runs so high and so fast, that think about it, if you hear a piece of music, when most people say, I love that music, how do you play it? Well, that's a great tune. My brain automatically says, how do you play it? Right? What's the tablatures? How do you work out on the guitar? How would you play this? And my brain just breaks everything down. I mean, one job in the Navy, I was working on the engineering part. So it's like basically a refurbishment part of helicopters. I was like, this is like Lego kits to me. This is great. But it's great on one part, but on the other part, your brain could just fly off on that handle, and that's it.
You talked about a pressure cooker and a release valve. Did you find yourself a release valve?
I did, and I'll tell you what, and this is where I really resonated on, obviously a good mate of mine, Rob Vickers, who runs Jim Self-Harm's Club. And basically it was through exercise. I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I would beast myself. I would do an hour of press ups, sit ups, burpees, skipping, weights, punch bags, everything. And to a point where I just couldn't lift my arms anymore. I would just beast myself. And because what it does is, yes, you do get that hit, that dopamine hit, but that's afterwards. It's like kind of you push yourself mentally you kind of push yourself physically to fix yourself mentally, because you come out of a completely different zone. You're in this zone of like, your brain is just, right, I need to focus on this goal, and I'm going to go and go and go at this until I can't do no more. And I found it was through that's when I realized that's my release valve.
Okay. Yeah, there is, I know we all take things to that extent or to that degree with various ways of venting ourselves. And it can, and it is, when anything goes too far, it becomes a form of self-harm. And I've seen quite a lot of guys from the military who've whether it's drink or drugs or gambling or sex or exercise or whatever it is, just go so far to one extreme, because again, it's that will not quit. And it is about balance, isn't it? What apart from, yes, you've got that physical exhaustion, which kind of, it does clear your mind, because when you're that goosed and you got nothing left in the tank, you can't actually worry about anything, because there's no energy left to expend on it. So was there anything else that you got from that helped you?
I think what it does is it focuses you. It kind of, you zone out of everything, because you put yourself into a place that you are physically going to challenge yourself. And you kind of go, okay, I switch off from this. Yes, I was doing like meditation, I was doing journaling, I was doing all those parts, but that's very soft skills almost. It's like kind of where you can switch off easily. When meditation, it got to a point where I became very good at it, that I would almost deep breathe that much that you kind of, when you're lightheaded, and it's almost like you hyperventilate to a point where your brain switches off at that point. So I was kind of doing things on extreme levels, but not really tapping into that. But on the exercise part, I learned a lot of lessons, because you kind of go, okay, what can I physically do? How far can I physically push myself? And you challenge yourself, so you're not thinking about that problem, that one problem, or that problem, or that problem. Everything's pushed to one side. It's like, you focus on that. I'm going to do that today. I'm going to do that. And it gives you that release in such a good way that you kind of feel like that. And you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to. And that's what actually led us on to going back into martial arts. And I haven't trained for really the last 18 months, obviously, because COVID and everything like that. And even a lot of clubs are still restricted down to there's no contact. They're still not able to do contact in areas such as that. But like that's what got us back into martial arts, and that became my place of peace as well.
Yes, well, it is. It's very focused, very disciplined.
Yeah.
And it needs single-mindedness, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Very much
Because
so.
I find with martial arts, I found that was very much my place of peace, even though you're in a place of violence.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially it. And I know I've wrote a lot about violence, and people kind of go, okay, right. Some people might get it, some people might not, but it's from a place of you when you are in that circle of chaos and you have been trained in the military, your primary role is to, and if it's infantry, especially if it's say infantry base, it is you close in and kill the enemy. That was basically your role.
Absolutely.
Even in the Navy, you are tasked, and it's a ships protection organization. Yes, you do have, like, obviously the Royal Marine Commandos have their area of ships boardings parties. The Royal Navy does as well. But essentially, my job was, if we were in pirate waters and they got on board, if they did, then it was to close in and kill the enemy, basically to neutralize the threat. And that's essentially, and that's the level of that you take it to.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there. You know, the military trains, as you said, frontline troops of in whatever capacity to deal with threats with aggression and violence.
Yeah.
And when we leave, nobody teaches us to not apply it in that way when we leave or before we leave. So we apply it, and this is where I like, you touched on the soft skills stuff. We don't deal with the softer emotions in the military because they get in the way of the job. You can't shoot somebody in the face and feel compassion for them. It just doesn't work, does it?
It doesn't. Nah.
Slightly counterproductive.
Yeah.
Sorry, does that hurt? So we don't really learn how to identify them, be aware of what they are, how they feel, and what they mean. So, and I've so many guys and some of the women that I've helped over the last kind of 10, 15 years with this have struggled with that. And I was surprised by some of the women as well, because they were in a similar position. Despite women are typically more emotionally attuned than we are, we have to work at it. They have it. They're naturally gifted with that capacity to identify and be aware of and feel more comfortable with than we are. Quite envious actually of that capability that women have. It's not fair. So we have to work at it, and that gets in the way, because I saw so many guys fall apart because when their girlfriends or wives were giving them shit for something because they were drunk again, or they were just being, they were all the symptoms of post-traumatic stress, but not aware of it themselves, and then getting a hard time for being a dick. So their other half thought at the time, but wasn't their fault. It was just the way things were progressing, and it was a slippery slope, because then they start getting, aggressive verbally, start throwing things around, punching holes in walls and doors, all that sort of stuff, and then it's a hot Teflon oily slope, and it's a rapid descent from there for lots of, unfortunately. So what you're saying just rings true from so many people I've spoken to.
Definitely, because there's something I learned a while now, and it was through martial arts, and I found that I kind of thought it's very true. When you're in the military, you only know war and chaos. That is essentially that part of it. When that's applied, especially over the last 20 years.
Yep.
But really, when you look at it, there has been those periods of conflict. I mean, even Ireland was a war to me. That was a war.
Yep.
And when you look at it, I was on board RFA Argus. That was June 2000. We were tasked, and it was said we were going down there for the official lines were we were going down there to do a bit of PR. The unofficial was we were there to go to Sierra Leone, as a hospital ship, to basically exfil the paras and other troops. And that was our task. We got down there and we were waiting for the green light. Never come, got sent home. Obviously turn around, new crew, they went down, they got the green light to go in. So they got a nice little shiny medal for that one. But at that point, what your job is, and you're there to do that. If they'd have said to me, right, get on board that helicopter, you're going on land, go for it. yeah, brilliant. You know, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I would do it. It's part of my job. I would go ahead and do that job, you know. And like, to be honest, that is what I signed to do, and that's what my job was essentially, was to do that, you know.
So from those experiences you've had, you touched on some other things, and I don't know whether how much you want to go into that in terms of the issues with not just the relationship itself, but things that happened in that relationship that were out with the problems, in terms of the abuse. How did you get yourself through those? What was it that managed to, you know, keep you as much on an even keel as possible without disappearing down that rabbit hole?
To be honest, it got to a point where I mentally switched off from that person. I disconnected from that person.
Okay.
And it was like, I mentally did that before I physically did it. But it also it was two planes. It was like, there was that part physically, but there was also that part mentally that you kind of go down. And it was something clicked in us. It was like, I felt like, no, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm not going to do this, because you're absorbing all this happening. You're absorbing this bit by bit by bit, absorbing this, absorbing that. And you don't realize how much you're taking on board, because we're very robust. We're very resilient, especially in chaotic situations.
Hugely
and
so.
you kind of, you kind of go focused, right? I'm going to do that. And I'm going to just, you know, just crack on, you know, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And, you know, going back obviously on that question there, what you have is you've got two levels. Some people physically detach before it gets to the end. Some people mentally detach. I found I was kind of doing both. But I literally got to a point where, you know, when you have those, it's a flick. It's like you flick the switch and you go dim, and that's it. You know something's going to change.
Yeah.
And you become more resilient, and you kind of, that's when things stepped up the ante on one side of it, that I made a decision and I went, right, that's not going to happen anymore. I'm not going to accept that. I've got a right to live. I've got a right to be who I am. I've got a right to do this. And someone just clicked in this. It wasn't like anybody. It was just something mentally. I was like, a switch had been thrown, and I was like, that's it. So I started making, all right, I'm going to come away from this situation because it's not good for us. Yeah. And in some sense, it was good when I did. It was at the right time that I did switch off, and I did make that disconnection. And that was it. My head was like, right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do plan A, B, and C. And I think it became more relevant, especially after I'd actually signed up to get a council flat. And I'd signed for the keys and all that. And it was usual, oh, we can try again. And I was like, do I go down this route again? Part of us, like, obviously in hindsight, it's like, you should have never done that. Just gone ahead. But I did. And because I'd signed for the keys, I turned around and went, right, you owe a month's rent. Luckily, I managed, it was over Christmas period, so it was like 2 weeks free rent. So I basically was lumbered with a bill of £200 still low. And I was like, right. And then I gave it about a couple of weeks after that. And it was like, in my back of my head, I'm still thinking I should have took that flat, but, you know, go forward, nothing. But the thing is, so the more I started standing up for myself, the more I started saying no. And the more that I was like, I'm going to do this because I need to do this. And I became more aware of things that I thought, no, this is what I want to do. I'm not going to be bullied into place. So it's kind of like, the more I put that shield up and went, no, that ain't going to happen. This is not what I'm going to do. That's when the arguments, and that you could see it started getting into like, she'd come in and it'd be like, she'd come and push us. And I was like, well, fair enough. And it got a point where it started the hits, the slaps coming in on myself. And I'm like, well, I'm the person that would be like, look, calm down. You know, you don't need to do this. I'm very much a level of like, oh, look at a situation, but I'd rather talk about it, because to me, it's like, look, this is what it is. This is what I need to do. This is what needs happening. And it got, the more I kind of put that, like, I used that shield up, I was like, I'm not going to take crap basically anymore. That's when things got, and then I broke it. I was like, right, I'm out of here. Enough is enough. And I broke that, you know what I mean? And to be honest with you, it was, I don't know whether it was like, at that point, I became so mentally strong and resilient that I realized that that's when you know that you've gained strength. You know when you've done that to a level that you're comfortable with.
To make that decision and make that break and walk away.
Yeah.
It's a tough decision, regardless of what's going on. It's still, it might make sense, but it's still difficult to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like a lot of people find them in that situation, and you always hear the classic, and you've probably heard this 100 times. Why didn't you leave? Or why didn't you? And you'll hear a lot of people, unless you've been in that situation yourself, that you kind of go, and I know, and it's something I know I posted this morning on a story, and it was obviously the whole area of like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and how many times, and people have said, if that had been her, you would have seen everybody, Johnny Depp this, Johnny Depp that. But because it happened to a man, mental and physical abuse does happen to men. And that's what people have got to realize. And I think it was I've seen actually a clip, and it was actually, this goes to prove, actually, it was on it was from a Jeremy Kyle clip. And he basically had a lad who said, I was locked in a flat and there's three floors up. He went open the door, the handle came out his hand, and his only option was to jump out of a window. And the crowd were laughing and this and that. And Jeremy Cole went, hang on a minute. If that had been a woman in that situation and a man had locked them in that room, you would have said, that's terrible. But you're now laughing because it's a man and you find it funny. Why is there? It's a double standards. And I feel like this is something that really needs to be discussed more, that men are mentally and physically and even sexually abused on a daily basis.
Yes.
And this is what, and because men are the alphas, they're meant to deal with this level of shit that you expected, aren't you, as a man?
Yeah.
It's seen as perceived that you're this man, you're the alpha male, you've got to take this level. And you think, hang on a minute, let's reverse roles now. What? So if a woman is in a physically or mentally or even sexually abusive relationship, that's accepted, which naturally it is, but when it's a man, it's like, it's fine, he can take that. Or people are like, why didn't you leave? And it's no difference, there's no difference whatsoever. And I think that's another thing people have got to understand, isn't it?
Agreed. Abuse is abuse, regardless of which way around it's delivered. There is no difference at all. And I agree, it should be talked about more, and it's not. It's starting to be. It is starting to be. It's being promoted more in the public eye and the media. There have been various documentaries I've seen over the last few years that have talked about it, and it's quite hard hitting, actually, because it's unexpected. It's not the norm, is it?
I think that's what you've just said it right there. It's not the norm, because we perceive it as men as strong, men are like alpha males, men are this, men are that, and women. And that's, it's changing now, the whole language of it. It's about changing the language and the way that we perceive something and the way that we look at something, because everything should be on the basis of equality. That's the way I've looked at it, because I didn't realize, it wasn't until I started doing this journey of self-reflection, and I joke about it now, that I started journaling before I even knew it was journaling. I started writing things down and was like hiding it away. I was hiding this stuff away, this content. I had this content, and I was like, how did I feel today? Okay, this is what I felt like. Okay, how did you? And I don't even know where. I used to write a lot as poetry and like descriptive writing as a kid from a young age, and it came back. There's these little things, and I think we're naturally tuned with life skills anyway, and we tap into these life skills when the time's right. And to me, writing was a natural thing that I felt, so I kind of resolved back to what was natural. And I know through a lot of meditation, I use something, and it's basically like a memory palace. The memory of Loki I used, and what it does is I've pictured a ship, so there's lockable rooms in there. You've got somewhere that will dispose of rubbish. So I kind of went, okay, that was a good memory, I blocked it in that room. That's a bad memory, I put it in the trash. And I did this for over a period of time through meditation, and I kind of broke it down and went, okay, there's a level that I can accept, and that goes in that good area. So in your brain, you've got this like you do put them into different compartments, and you go, okay, that was a good experience, that was a bad experience, I don't want that. And even now, I have conversations with people now, say, do you know what, I can't even remember half of my childhood. I can't even remember half of this. And I think because I did it for quite a while, that I kind of just started binning loads of rubbish that was like non-relevance or any importance to us, that I found out I am just literally, and I said this kind of, we do have this area of post-trauma, of pre-trauma and post-trauma, but we always remember the good times before, and we always remember the good times after. But we tend to, this is the bit we need to work on, is let's have a look and go, okay, that was good, that was bad, let's put this to one side. And it was through journaling that I started writing this down. And that's how I went into writing, because it was like, oh, well, that helped me. Would it help somebody else? And this is how it started. But the problem is that I wasn't dealing with a lot of stuff as well. I kind of switched off from it. I realized that it was like this spiral, this like downward spiral, especially of other relationships. And I spoke about this a couple of weeks back. You do take a lot of baggage from trauma into other relationships.
Absolutely, yes. We can't help but do it, because we draw comparisons. And if something makes us feel, that a new person makes us feel something that was bad in a previous relationship, we draw comparisons immediately.
Yeah, definitely.
We look for patterns, and then it makes us anxious, and we step back and we become guarded, and then they wonder what's going on, even though if they haven't actually done anything, but something's made us, it doesn't even have to be connected, but somebody's made us feel like something from the past.
Yeah,
emotional memory comes up, and then all these red lights and red flags. And
because I found that I was trying to overcompensate as well, and it was almost like trying to prove a point to myself that I wasn't wrong, I hadn't done wrong, or everything I was doing was right. It was almost like I had to prove that to myself. But the problem was, though, when you start carrying a lot of baggage, and I like that part about the Bergen, you keep filling that up, but you can only carry that Bergen so far up this massive hill, especially if you do, for example, the fan dance. You stick a 50k Bergen on your back and get up Penny Fan, you'll soon be like red lined, lunged, and just can't do nothing even halfway. You're like, oof. But imagine that. It's like, that is almost equivalent of what mental pressures you carry on a daily basis. But I didn't realize, to a point, that it spiraled and spiraled and spiraled and spiraled to a hit point where I was about to jump off a bridge. I literally went, that's it. And I remember the day that I was like, I had it planned, and I was actually going for a tattoo on the Saturday. And what changed it, and this was massive game changer, and do you know what, I didn't realize how much an effect this would have at that point. I got a text I messaged messages and someone, and I got a message back saying, just say you're okay. And that saved my life. It was that one message, and because they must have picked up on me of the way that my language was coming across, and the way that I was. Because even a few days beforehand, I got to a point where I woke up at 12 o'clock at night, and literally it felt like Darth Vader just force choked us. It was like my whole throat closed up, and I just couldn't breathe. I had to put fingers down my throat to try and open it back up, and I couldn't get to a phone an ambulance. I was like, I'm dying. I am going to die here. And it was just, I don't know what, it must have been a accumulation of everything. And it was just got worse and worse. And it was after that literally I was like, right, I've had enough. I'd hit that wall, and you become very tunnel visioned. You start off out here, and the more trauma you go through, the more everything chaos, and it gets smaller and smaller. Everything outside of that side and everything outside of that side doesn't exist to yourself. You just see that. It's almost like I use a lot of and obviously you've read a lot of my stuff, and I use that analogy. You walk down the street and you're just a stranger, but everybody's walking past you, and no one knows you're there. You become this ghost. You become that ghost. And that's how I found more and more and more and more. And people would say to me the classic one-liner, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. And you kind of, but for some reason that message, and it actually came from the person who's my wife today. She say, and I've always said that, and it was like, for some reason that message, that was it. Out of everything, that pinged. And that changed us, because that night I would have jumped off a bridge. I was literally on that point of like, right, that's it, game over. If I'm going to go out this world, I'll do it myself.
Yes.
Yeah,
I totally understand that, having been to that point. I know what it's like. It's a strange sense of calm and peacefulness.
Yeah, but that was it. That was the chaos, wasn't it? It's like, I don't know, you've maybe experienced that. Someone asked us a question about fear, and I said, you know what? I've got no fear of running on the battlefield and putting rounds down and going into incoming fire and dragging one of my teammates out of the shit. I'm comfortable doing that than to lose someone close to us. It's almost like I have no fear of doing that. I have no fear of putting myself in harm's way. I've got no fear of running into gunfire. I've got no fear of taking a round. I've no fear of that part of it. But it's that other part where you kind of go, oh, I don't want to lose someone. And it's like, and I find that with that part, your brain starts clicking over. That you get to a point of like, your brain switches off and goes, that's it, basically game over, because you feel like I'd rather do this myself than to leave this to carry on the existence, because you start having these doubts of like, well, I'm a burden on somebody, I'm not good enough, I'm not this. And this is what you live on, this is what you feed on. You feed just this poison, as Jeff Thompson would say, it's like a feeding this poison. You're consuming this every single day. The more you tell yourself something, it's that language, but it's a very vicious language, because instead of standing there and just being open, isn't it? And just saying, look, I feel like shit, basically. You don't do it.
No, because we don't want anybody to think that we're weak, we're broken, that there's something wrong, because there's these kind of socio-cultural confines that men are placed into that have become even smaller these days, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
The expectations of how men are expected, how we're expected to be. There is I've had somebody conversations in the past, and I won't mention any names at all, but this whole thing of equality between the sexes. There will never be equality, because we're different, and we should be treated equally, because we're all human beings. But there is an inequality, or not an inequality, but there are differences that make us better at things than men, better at things, and women better at things in some areas. And that's about the balance of life. That's how it works. But women can defend themselves if a man is violently aggressive and abusive to her, but a man can't, because then he's the aggressor.
Yeah.
If a woman stabs a man or beats him, with a stick, or throws plates, or kicks, punches, bites, scratches, if he smacks her in the face, breaks her jaw, and knocks her out, he's the one that's going to go to jail.
Exactly.
So that side, that inequality is, for me, wholly unacceptable, and needs to be addressed and redressed, the balance, because it's an unfair system.
Yeah, it's a lot of like exactly that. There's certain things you can accept, then there's certain things you feel like it needs to change, because exactly that, because it's good in some ways. You've got to be very, very like calm in that sense, that when you're getting someone who's aggressive on you, you've got a choice. You can either be aggressive back, or you can try and de-escalate it. Or if it did go to a point where there's violence involved, you got to know how you handle yourself. And luckily for me, the point is, I'm very good at controlled aggression.
Yes.
I'm very good at that part. And it's that part, when to flick the switch and hit that Wolverine switch, as I call it. You know when to unleash hell. And the part of it is like, luckily for me, I'm very like, I became good at controlling that, even though now I knew what I was capable of. And it's that part of like, don't push this button, because there's going to be a point where you're going to push it too far, and I'm going to fire back, and you're not going to like this. And I was going against like 6 foot 18 stone blokes, and I was like, I don't care who you are, I will take you down. And you've got that mentality of like, you are just a target in front, I'll go through you. And it's like that part of it, there's that part in a lot of men And this is where men have got a lot of people got to realize is exactly that. If a woman starts pushing, and it's been seen on bouncers on nightclubs,
Yes.
women have attacked men and they've defended themselves, and they've like basically rear naked choked her from them. And they said, but that's abuse. So hang on a minute. He was de-escalating the situation that in a sensible way, because I got taught that if you can basically rear naked choke someone, you are literally making them, put them on the floor and put them in a recovery position. You've actually lowered the level of aggression, especially someone who's consumed alcohol.
Yeah,
Then to actually, exactly, you're actually helping them, because you've knocked them out and you put them on the floor, but what you've done is you've de-escalated straight away because you've took away that level of violence.
Yes. Yeah, not everybody's that good though. Not everybody's
exactly
has learned the capability to apply, aggression and violence in that way. There are, there's ways and means for everything. But yeah, I know some guys that say that equality should work both ways, and if a woman punches me, I'm going to punch her back. I'm not necessarily a slight difference in strength and power generally.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's got to be proportionate, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because they always say that you work at that level of violence, or you respond back. So you have obviously your lethal, which is your end result, and then you have your non-lethal, and then it's that point of like, okay, where does it go from being non-lethal application to lethal? And this is why I write a lot on violence, because essentially we are almost very violent naturally. We are at war. We're either at war externally or internally. We're always at war.
Yes, de-escalation is always the best starting point for regardless of the situation. I think where are you now? How are things for you now? What's different, and what is it what have you learned from your life that's kind of helped to get you through those things and get you to where you're now? What are the key things that have got you through?
To be honest, it's obviously my wife. She's my absolute rock. My kids, absolute rock. You've got to have somebody there is strong enough to stand by you through the chaos, but you've also got to be there through the good times, bad times, whatever. And that's never been more truer. I've broke down, cried on my wife's shoulders and more times than I can remember. But it's having somebody there that will help you, that will stand by you. Yes, I like to say it because I like to always, because one book that I absolutely love is Musashi's book, The Book of Five Rings. And Musashi says himself, he says, you've got to have you've kind of got to look at a lot of things to broaden your life. And then you've got to have one or two things to polish your life. So to me, I look at it as like that family, that bond there, that circle of people, those close people. And I'll be honest now, I've got more friends, and a lot of them are virtual friends, like we've never met, but I've got a lot more like people that I call brothers. And that is meant by brother in the actual sense of it, of like, yes, you are my brother. And I've got more close friends, male and female. So I'm very much a person of on that sense of it. But you've got to have those people. It's that family, because to me, they're my family. They're not just friends. They're not just your mate down the pub or mate this person. To me, that's family. Then there's the other part of it, that all these little, they call them soft skills. So I say it mean meditation, journaling, that area. Physical fitness is one of my biggest ones.
Yeah,
that's my go-to, whether it be like on the punch bag, go for a run, crazy challenges, up and down 3 peaks, wherever it is. It's that physical exertion, because it gives you that dopamine hit that naturally you're aiming for. You see, so those are kind of the soft skill areas. And I feel a lot of people, you've kind of got to get it all the right balance as well. You can't take one over the other, and you can't take the other one over the other. So you've got to find this equal balance of, like, to me, like I said, journaling became writing then became, I want to publish these because that actually might help people. That then went into launching the whole DarkSide podcast part, because people say, oh, DarkSide, because originally it was a joke of Star Wars. And I was like, no, what this meant is because my second book was Welcome Back to the Dark Side. So I kind of was originally named the Instagram account as being that. Then I just cut it down to DarkSide. what dark side is when you're in a place of chaos, once you leave that, you then can go back, revisit, and change the rules. So you're basically going back to the dark side. And that's where my journey began. It became very much a phoenix. And that's where my tattoo journey became as well. I started putting things on my body that remind us on a daily basis. Like I've got one on there saying, I'm awesome. Now that could be very vain. That could be picked up in a vain sense. But I used to wake up every single day and there's that one line now of like G.I. Jane saying, "Who ya, I'm awesome," or "Who ya." And that's where it came from. I'm awesome. It was that affirmation. It's that mantra that got us out of bed every single day. I've got something to wake up for next day. And that's why I've got this on my body and various, and I've got like Jack and Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas, but that's actually from my wife, me and my wife. My body now is like, it's getting more, and I would fill a full body if I could. But it's these little things, but I love that area because what I love about tattooing as well, you go through that pain barrier. And you kind of get that. I fall asleep again. I can lie back and say tattoo away, and I fall asleep because you start getting that dopamine hit, and you start thinking, I enjoy this, and it's kind of you're enjoying. You're going to see beauty through pain.
Yes,
because there's that painful experience, but at the end of it, there's a beautiful image. It's like that is going to be there for life, and it's that reminded. I like that term. We're the body architects. We design our own body. Well, I design my artwork. What you see was like every part of it represents something in my life. So there's a lot of little aspects that we kind of tap into that kind of, and like say it was martial arts. And even on that part, and as quickly just go into that bit there, I found I was training Muay Thai, Western style kickboxing, ninjutsu. I was doing self-defense courses. I'd already done previously Aikido, karate. So I'd got a good background in the martial arts world, but I found that I had to take, and that was a point where I couldn't even walk up the stairs. I was training. What it was I put the knee bracelets on, and what these done was they heated up. So every time my knees were hot, I felt fine. So I was kickboxing, I was doing all of this, and I was fine. And then it got to a point where those little problems started kicking in. At one point, I was living on cocodamol. I couldn't even walk up the stairs like a 70-year-old man. And what happened was I had to take 3 months out of martial arts, and that kind of was that decision. I've got to break this now. When I came back, I found it was different application. I found I was positioned more fluently. I found I was doing things at a slower pace. I wasn't getting as anxious. I wasn't getting, and it was like so smooth. And if you ever look at a lot of, especially within martial arts, you get this term and it's called mushin, which is no mind. So you want to get to a point where you not think anything before, you're not thinking anything after, you're just in that moment. Because that's what we tend to do, isn't it? We tend to always worry about everything before and everything after. It's like, no, you kind of, and I know some people have said on that aspect of death of like, mushin is almost at that point. And it's like, I found myself in that place many, many times where I feel comfortable, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, it's, we've all got we all have to find our own way. That's for sure. And I like, that kind of analogy you drew on that, life is very much like having a tattoo done. Because we're a constant work in progress, and we cannot, change and growth isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it's painful. And just like on the body, there are areas of the body that you get tattooed that hurt a lot more than others.
There's a few cheeky areas, I must admit.
So, in order to create something beautiful within ourselves, we have to go through some pain in order to learn and change and grow and become more of the person that we aspire to be.
Because I actually said that. I said that to somebody. I was speaking to that mate H, and I said we've become so comfortable with becoming uncomfortable because it's all with fixed ideas. Have you ever noticed how everybody will repost the same thing? Or I used to say this is where I started. If you ever look through my feed, anybody obviously listen to this and watch it, anybody who goes through it, I will always put a context to an image, because you'll find that people will always put an image without context. And you kind of go, Well, what do you mean by that? And now I've very much, in my way of doing things, is what that reflects is I will put an image, but I'll also put why I've put it there. So there's always a meaning there. And I tend to do that with everything, because you get the great, and that's no disrespect to people like Jocko or any of those other people, great ideas. But you've got to get to a point in your life where you see that evolution.
Yes.
You know, evolution to me is the way forward. It's not what's been, it's not what's happening even now. It's like, what's going to happen? Let's just start changing the game a bit here now, because I feel like in society, we've got to a point where people are, especially, I mean, you know yourself, look at life coaching. Life coaching has gone boom. Why? Because you can go and do a course in a couple of weeks, get your qualification and say, right, and I can teach someone. No disrespect, people go down that route because there's a lot of valid in it. And it's the same as personal trainers.
Yeah.
And like, you know yourself, like everybody who's either a former PTI or anything like former military in that area, they'll go and become a personal trainer or a bodyguard or CP courses or something. You know the standard routes they go through. There's more people now who either in life coaching or physical training, which is fantastic, but you'll also get people who are kind of like selling the same ideas, the same fixed ideas, which then people go, okay, that's great, that, because once they start learning and once they start reading these books and all this context and so, but it's about applying those lessons. Okay, you've got to that point now. What's next? Where are you going next for your life? Yep. It's great. We can listen to podcasts all day, and there's some amazing podcasts out there, and it's great to have that broader perspective of life. But it's about, okay, that person's advice, now how do I apply it? But it's moving forward, isn't it? I think we need to get to that point of evolution that we're not relying on fixed ideas anymore.
Yes, don't try and be who you used to be, because you can't. Yep. And it's not always appropriate to be who you used to be in this stage in your life. And don't try and be somebody else.
Absolutely.
So what if you would, what's next for you? What are you working on now? Is there anything that you'd like to promote that's important to you right now?
Well, firstly, and I never expected this. With the podcast, it took off. And I mean, it was just like, wow, people were like, yeah, I was kind of I built quite a few relationships with people when it first started, before it even started. And it was actually, I simply thought, I'll take the plunge, even though I was like, because everyone's like, oh, you come across so relaxed and that. I was like, you want to see us like about 3 minutes before I start. My anxiety is literally like up here, and I'm sitting there going, doing breathing exercises and box breathing and everything to slow that and to get that adrenaline through your body, but a good consistency rate, because it's like, you know, and you got to take that. And it was my friend Janie McGill, and I just said to her, do you fancy coming on just chatting? You know, I want to meet these people. I want to start talking to people. And Janie was the first person on, and then it was kind of like, it built and built and built, and it kind of, I started getting a few people on either regular, and to me, I would never have done that. I've been doing podcasts over a year now, because I was in lockdown when I started it. Because see, when everybody went into lockdown, obviously I went to work from home. Great, okay, I'll do that. We thought it was gonna be like 3 weeks, a month, something like that. 18 months later, you know, we're still in this situation. But at that point, what I feel, and I've said this to people at work, when everybody went into lockdown, everybody was like, oh, it's like a bank holiday, and it will go on the beers, do this. I thought it was and everyone was on furlough, great party. What I did was I locked down, and I went, right, I'm going to create a podcast. I'm going to write books. I'm going to do this. And I literally wrote my first fictional book, Ronan, in 30 days. I literally woke up every morning at 5 o'clock, and I wrote 1,000 words a day, 1,000, 1,500 every single day. And I would just like, right. And creative thought. That was like my very first fictional novel. So I've done that. I've done a mental health management book. I created that. That was done. I've ghostwritten 3 books in the last year. I've done all that part. Obviously, the podcast guests have been right across the globe, from America to Australia. You know, And the podcast is more the important. I never realized how big, like I said, it was going to take off. So it really took off. That's something that, and I've just done a WordPress site. So there is a DarkSide WordPress site as well. I put it all in my Linktree, because what I've done was, it wasn't Linktree, sorry. I started with Linktree and then I found Flow Page. And Flow Page allows you to add more on it. So it's all in my bio. And I find it's a lot better. You can even put pictures and make it pretty and everything. But everything's on there. So there'll be like the podcast, which is on iTunes and Spotify, and it's also now on WordPress. So there's a little bit of writing about it as well. I've also got another WordPress. I'm going to try and get that on. Actually, it's DarkSide Evolutions on WordPress. Okay. So that's actually a book that I never released. It was called The Uncomfortable Truth of Becoming Comfortable. And then like the other part of it, so everything's on my Flow Page anyway, and it's like books are on Amazon. I've released them all fully now. There's also like the Jim Self-Harmer's one book and a couple other ghost written ones I've done for like Fred Wickley and Tomo from Granite Zero. Ghost wrote his book. And then now I'm now doing a sequel to Ronin. So that's the Bells of Redemption. So that's kind of like a work and project. That's going to be done for the next year.
Yeah.
I want to just take my time because I want to draw on historical, but I also want to, it's that point now where I've wrote one book, which was very trauma and chaotic and chaos and everything like that. Now I want to go into more the historical part of Japan, but also the part of where somebody looks inside themselves. It's almost like that, the journey, the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, going into the cave and everything. So when people read it, I want them to pick up on those parts of like, oh, well, this is what, I pick up on that. So I want people to pick up on the reason why is because people to read that and think, actually, it's like, I think that, and I think this. So I want it to become a very thinking book. And the other one I'm actually writing is the A to Z of Evolution. I've literally done 26 chapters. I've already wrote one chapter because I didn't start that long back, but I'm going to go A to Z of like, it's been actually about 3 weeks since I started. But what I've been doing is taking little bits and then just putting it down. And I want to get about 3,000, 3,500 a chapter. So it's like goes from A for action, B for basics, and then so forth.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that's another book. So I'm working on 2 books at the same time. I've got another little project that's in the works as well. But see what happens with that. And basically, so if anybody wants to, everything me, it's all Instagram really. I deleted the Facebook page. There was some issues with another site with a project I was involved with. So I deleted all that. Easier way. Sometimes it's easier just to think, to me, Facebook is more like it's a very modern Twitter. It's, Facebook to me has become like Twitter now. And I literally go on now and I'm like, okay, see you later, back on Instagram. So I don't have LinkedIn anymore. I took LinkedIn down because I kind of at one point felt like maybe it was quite self-destructive in a way, but I know we were chatting through there as well. I might boost that as well, and restart that again, because I found that there was, I don't know if you found out, sometimes you put something out there and I wasn't getting much like feedback or interaction at all. It was very like, okay. And it got a point where I was like, it is. It's very hard work. And I always just put it out there. Okay, it's on a business platform. See if this works. If people say, oh, would you I'll be interested working with you on this project. Now I put it more for like, because I have launched a couple of businesses as well. I even done a creative writing business. So if people wanted to, and that's on Instagram as well. And it's called Think Creation. But I can send you all the details anyway.
Yeah, because what I'll do is I will post everything at the end of this, so everyone will have it on screen, and it'll be in the blog post as well. This will be attached to as well, so it'll be
cool.
People will not miss a trick. They'll find everything.
Yeah, brilliant. Because it's like literally that's what I would say. It's go on my Flow page on Instagram, DarkSide Podcast. And that'll link you to everything. I'll go for the iTunes, Spotify. I don't bother with YouTube. That's a lot of hassle. And the way YouTube is at the moment is as well. And like I said, there is Think Creation, which is more my creative writing business. So people who've got websites, social media, anything like that, I would take it and go, right, okay, let's change this. Let's improve this. How can we improve it? Because I found it's that internal battle of there, and there. My OCD goes into overdrive when I see these 3 words. And it's kind of, I could improve it. I can improve things. You always see something, it really gets you, go, no, I'm not happy with that. So I launched that, and it kind of died a bit because of, obviously I launched it through COVID, taking a very leap of faith to see if anything would come out of it. But
Okay.
I have got that element. So the two is obviously Think Creation, DarkSide Podcast, and that's about it really. You know, those two areas. But like I said, I do put things out there that are up and coming as well. I know on the guest side for the podcast, I'm currently doing one a week because I was doing 3. Hard work.
Yeah,
that's a lot of hard work. Yeah, and it was more bending. It was really pushing into family time, and I was like, no, I can't. You know, I'm not going to sacrifice family time for that. So it kind of wound it down to 1, which is cool. But I've got some really good. I know future guests. I've got some pretty big names that I've been in discussions with. That I hope to bring on and see what happens. Really, take it as it comes.
Nice. Well, I tell you what, you've made the best of a shitty situation with COVID and lockdown, and absolutely powered through. So all power to you, mate. That's impressive. Collection.
I appreciate that, mate.
Put together. You know, you can be rightly proud of yourself.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. The other part that I want to touch on is you saw it anyway, the Sierra Hotel.
Yes.
And that was something that I really wanted to push forward, because I found that because we went through obviously that spate, and it's still happening with veteran suicides. And I know I did an Instagram live on it, and I couldn't post it, maybe because I used the word suicide. I don't know. But that was something, and I always say that it's like, even if you just send somebody a message saying Sierra Hotel, send help.
Yeah.
That's, you know, because I've done it recently with a friend of mine, a good friend, and I literally you're on a text message play, don't do this, and you're kind of trying to coax them or change them, keep their mind active, and it's like take them down from that abyss. I've been in that situation recently, and it's hard, but
it is.
People, even if people send that message, Sierra Hotel, you know, I really wanted to push it out there, because to me, we know what it's like when you're in that dark space. You don't want to talk, but even if it's just to send a message, you know, I need help. I need that help. But on the other part is, people need to, and I'm not going to knock people who do 22 press-ups a day, and I'm not going to knock anybody who does.
No.
But we've gone past awareness now. We're aware. We're aware of suicide. We know what happens. We've got personal experience of it. I've lost friends, like at the beginning of this year, lost a good friend of mine, Mick Smith. And I stood on top of basically Penny Fan, which one just before Penny Fan, raising a toast to him. I shouldn't have to do that. You know?
I agree. Awareness, the point of awareness is well and truly past, and we need to stop fucking talking and pissing around and get on and do something about it.
Yeah. And also that's why I push it out. Text your mates. If you see somebody, and I've said this bit, the behaviors, you know somebody well enough, you know their patterns of behaviors, you know if they're in a good place, a bad place, you know. Like simply the other day, mate said, oh, I'm a bit stressed out, so I went and worked out straight away. Are you good, brother? Are you good? And it's like, yeah, I'm good, thanks. And it's just those little things we pick up. Yeah. You know, if somebody's and you see a change in their behavior, message them. If we can spend 3 hours scrolling, we can spend this and this. Does it take 2 minutes just to say to somebody, you're good?
Yeah, it's nothing, is it? It's a simple thing to do.
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's all about being situationally aware. But as much as online presence, I do it a lot. I'm in the shadows a lot, where I'll see somebody's post and I'll message them and ping them, are you good? And I'm like, well, could be better. Right, let's talk. And it's about being aware of, and that's what the good thing about it is. Like I said, I only ever stored things like the Instagram unfollowers, purely so I could say, right, your account's gone down. Why's your account gone down?
Yeah.
Is there a problem? And I actually did it to a friend of mine. I seen it, and then it took literally, he was actually ex-army, but like I literally messaged one guy and he went, yeah, he's good. He's good. He's been in comms. And I was like, happy days, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot.
Yeah, so that's it.
Somebody.
Yeah. But so that's I'll be honest, that's probably one of the main messages, obviously, to wrap things up here. That I'll really want to see more people push out there is the Sierra Hotel, or just to send help and get in contact with your mates, speak to them. Yeah. You know, they're your mates.
absolutely 100%. You know, we're mates for a reason, so look after each other.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. And such a simple thing, Sierra Hotel. You know, simple shit works. It's the old principle. Kiss. Keep it simple, stupid.
Absolutely. I live by it. Absolutely live by it.
Yeah. Life needs to be simple because there's enough complicated shit out there as it is.
Yeah.
So, hey, Chris, thank you so much for coming on today. I've loved listening to you today. Lots of pearls of wisdom and life experience there for other people to draw on. So, and as you said, you know, don't try and make it fit. Don't try it on and as it is for you, make it fit for themselves. So
yeah,
I have no doubt that people will pick up on stuff that they can make use of from this. So thank you very much.
No, you're more than welcome, mate. You know, I mean, massive kudos to yourself as well of all the work. And obviously, I wish you the best of luck with obviously more books in the future, because obviously, like, you know, to see it, you know, get that work, because I think that's quite important. Your work has become your legacy. You've put that now in a book. That's now become a physical object. That's then going to be passed on to other people and knowledge. So that's your legacy. Even if people, and I always said this, even if you change one person's life for that better experience and positive, then I always said it's my job done. I would have finished a long time ago, but it's those messages you'll get, you know, and I do, and I can see and it's like I always said, on about social media, it's not your followers, it's not your likes, it's not the shares, they're all important, yes. But what's more important is the positive impact that you have on someone.
Yeah, you help one person, they'll go on and help other people.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah, roger that. Listen, mate, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we will speak again soon.
Definitely. Okay, and you watch what you're doing, mate.
You too. Cheers, buddy. Take it easy.
Cheers now. You too.
Bye.